Hey everyone, it's the Miserable Movie Man back again with another video. And for this one, I wanted to be just as controversial as I've been recently and talk to you about 5 reasons why I prefer the Blue Beetle movie over Oppenheimer.
You crazy?
So when we get into it, let me start by caveating a few things. 1, don't try to come at me with some kind of, yeah, right, you don't understand the context or the subject matter or anything else. I have a master's degree in astrophysics, so there is no technical or theoretical element that you should be looking to me for saying that I didn't understand what they were talking about with Oppenheimer.
Hey man, don't do it.
So now that that's out of the way, I do want to say that I liked Oppenheimer. I thought it was a good film. I thought the performances were outstanding. Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr. gave incredible performances, and that was really reflected in the Academy Awards. But what I will say is, as much as the film was well made, as much as the acting performances lived up to expectations, all of those things added to the pomp and circumstance surrounding this film. And yes, it won a number of Oscars. But when I watched it, I thought it was a good film. Not a great film, a good film.
It was good, but not great.
And I went into Blue Beetle and I watched that thinking, you know, this film is really not going to be great. And I was pleasantly surprised by the way Blue Beetle pitched itself and what it was trying to achieve. So, do I think Oppenheimer's a better film? Yes. Do I think it's significantly better than Blue Beetle? In my opinion, that really depends on what you're looking for. So without further ado, let's go into 5 reasons why I preferred Blue Beetle over Oppenheimer. So reason 1. I thought Oppenheimer was way too long. I'm in a 3-hour movie in which 20 minutes in I needed to go to the bathroom and hold it for quite a significant period of time.
Pain!
Was not something that I thought, was what I really wanted to see. I thought Oppenheimer was too long by at least an hour. I think they could have trimmed a lot of the fat from that movie. And really, for me, I wanted to see much more of the challenges of how they made the bomb. They did throw some of those in there, but I think there's so many other areas to document the hard parts of, folks in different locations, working on different elements, coming together and dealing with problems. That, to me, was glossed over significantly. Whereas Blue Beetle was surprisingly short. It's rare to see like a 90-minute plus movie these days, but they managed to cram a lot into 90 minutes, whereas I thought Oppenheimer, a 3-hour runtime, crammed too much in and really was way too long, in my opinion. If they split it into 2 films, I could have understood, but I don't think that really would have sold. So the first reason I preferred Blue Beetle to Oppenheimer is that Blue Beetle was much shorter and concise. Oppenheimer was way too long, in my opinion. Second reason for me, again a personal thing, I didn't think Oppenheimer was that memorable. I would challenge folks to remember the movie that they went to see, the 3-hour movie, and come back to me with things that they remembered.
What? What do you mean you can't remember?
I honestly didn't think there was a lot of it that stuck in my head. I remembered, of course, the famous quote where Oppenheimer quotes from the Bhagavad Gita. I remembered the actual detonation scene for the bomb itself, and being a fan of Florence Pugh, I remember the sex scenes. But other than that, by and large, Blue Beetle was more memorable to me than Oppenheimer. I didn't remember as much of what happened in Oppenheimer as I remembered with the Blue Beetle film. For me, when I watched it, again, expectations were low. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not the best comic book movie ever. It doesn't try to be. But I remembered a lot of elements. Getting the suit, the family dynamic, the villain, the breakout, the grandma, spoiler alert, sacrifices, etc., etc. So for me, honestly, Blue Beetle was more memorable than maybe 2 or 3 key elements of Oppenheimer. Number 3, in a similar theme, I didn't think Blue Beetle was trying to be anything that it wasn't. Blue Beetle, as I said before, is a throwback to a very straightforward 90s style superhero origin movie. And I think it succeeds in that.
That was a 90s slam!
We are used to a significantly elevated level of superhero movie, especially with a number of the shows that we get on streaming services, in addition to Marvel and the MCU at its peak. I mean, DC debatably may come close. But Blue Beetle was really just for me a lot of fun. It was supposed to be fun. It wasn't trying to be too overly thematic or overly philosophical. It was just a lot of fun. To me, Oppenheimer really didn't know what it was trying to be. I mean, at times it was trying to be a grand epic. At times it was trying to be a biopic or biopic. At times it was trying to be an indictment on the human race, maybe a commentary on socialism, capitalism, and nihilism.
You're trying too hard.
It varied depending on the time period as to what it was trying to be, and to me that let the film down. Right from the get-go, Blue Beetle knew what it was trying to do, what it was trying to accomplish, what it was trying to achieve, and it unashamedly met that standard, even if the standard was probably significantly lower than the standard Oppenheimer was trying to achieve. Number 4, Blue Beetle was funny.
You think this is funny?
Yes, some of the jokes were over the top. Yes, some of the jokes perhaps didn't land. But you compare it to Oppenheimer, which is very serious subject material. I think it could have been alleviated somewhat by a few choice interjections, which never really happened. But it just got progressively more serious and heavy. And that's fine for a 3-hour film that's trying to go for that. But I found Blue Beetle was actually quite humorous. As I said, some elements may not have landed, but the family dynamic was great. Lopez was great. Grandma being the resistance fighter for me was great. So there were some genuine moments of hilarity for me, at least, even if it wasn't consistent throughout. And finally for me, Blue Beetle had heart. This is a movie with so much heart that I think is severely underlooked. People are holding it up to things like Endgame or some of the MCU stuff with the Winter Soldier, or even maybe Snyder's Justice League cut. But I thought, again, as a throwback to a 90s superhero origin movie, Blue Beetle was great. People have said that it's 20 years too late, maybe even 30 years to be honest. It would have killed in the 90s, but the heart was there. Robert Oppenheimer was a genius, and the film showed him as such, with warts and all, but he wasn't really a guy you were, at least for me, you were rooting for, or someone you were sympathetic towards. If I'm looking at that genre in my view, The Imitation Game did a far better job of making you care for the central protagonist. And I think, Benedict Cumberbatch was brilliant in that film. And actually, I think The Imitation Game was a better film overall when we're talking about people that have changed the world, people that were sort of misunderstood geniuses, etc. But I think for Blue Beetle, it had the heart that I was looking for when I was watching the film. The character of Jaime Reyes was really well portrayed. The family dynamic was great. So I really liked the heart that Xolo Maridueña brought to the role.
You got heart, kid. Where you from?
I mean, I've been a Blue Beetle fan since the 90s, really, and reading Ted Kord as Blue Beetle, done by the legendary Giffen de Matisse. JLA runs, JLI, various JL incarnations. So it was great to see the nods and the tips of the hat to Dan Garrett and Ted Kord, and just generally watching Jaime come into his own. I thought it was a great journey. A little bit by the numbers, but just the heart that the film had with the family dynamic and the circumstances. Yeah, I mean, the villain wasn't overly amazing, but then again, that's why I didn't think the film was overly amazing. I thought Susan Sarandon did an okay job, and Carapax was okay, but it was enjoyable. It wasn't trying to be super cool or super different or anything other than what it was. It knew what its wheelhouse was, and it stayed very clearly within it, with several enjoyable moments. And just going back to Oppenheimer, at the end of it, I walked away thinking that was an interesting portrayal of a man that I already knew quite a bit about, with elements in it that I thought were interesting to see. But overall, I didn't feel I was significantly moved.
Because I felt nothing.
And I'm not saying I was significantly moved by Blue Beetle, but it did move me. It was enjoyable enough, made me care about the characters enough. It had enough heart that I was invested. With Oppenheimer, I was thinking, well, I knew what he did, and I knew he created the bomb, and I knew a little bit how he was treated afterwards, and it didn't really drag me in the same way. So yeah, the heart that Blue Beetle had for me was another reason I preferred it to Oppenheimer. So that's it. Those are the 5 reasons that I came up with. Look, again, going back to the start of the video, I'm not saying that Oppenheimer is a bad film. Far from it. It's a good film. And I'm not saying that Blue Beetle is an amazing film. Far from it. It's a good film.
Children, were you paying attention?
To me, Blue Beetle succeeded more in what it was trying to achieve than Oppenheimer. But that's not to say that the making of, the attention to detail, the powerhouse performances in Oppenheimer were not noteworthy. They were. But there was so much about the rest of that film that I thought, well, maybe they could have gone a different way. Maybe they could have made it hit home a little bit differently. Whereas, again, I went to Blue Beetle watching it thinking, yeah, this is not going to live up to my expectations, but actually it did. Wasn't expecting a huge amount. It surpassed those, certainly. Really enjoyed the film. It was a lot of fun. The performances were great. The younger actors were great. Older actors were great. And it never strayed too far outside its wheelhouse. So, for those reasons, I have preferred Blue Beetle to Oppenheimer, and I encourage everyone to give Blue Beetle a second watch on a day where You got a bit of free time, you don't need to think too much, late night, popcorn, and friends, and just enjoy it. Enjoy it for what it is. It's an enjoyable movie for me. Oppenheimer is not quite, for me, the magnum opus that Nolan was hoping for. It is a statement. I'll certainly say that is a statement of its own. But you have to be ready for it. You have to be in the mood for it. You can't just throw it on there and just be dragged in and out.
Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering?
Whereas I think you can do that with Blue Beetle. So that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will be trying to put out more regular content now than I have done in the recent past. But I am the miserable movie man and the defender of films and titles and things that I think people have missed or given a hard time to. Whereas in retrospect, on balance of play, not quite as bad as you think. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and tune in for the next one.